Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the penultimate session in our series of 9 weekly presentations, public seminars about mobility as moves forward in the fourth industrial revolution. And I'm Richard Dasher. I direct the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center. We want to say thank you to all of our member companies in our industrial affiliates program because it's their financial support that allows us to put on this series. We also want to welcome everyone, and I have a special message for all of the students who are taking this course for credit. I apologize that I'm way behind in answering your comments. So don't worry, I'm getting your comments. If we have any issues, you'll hear from me within the next 3 or 4 days. We're delighted that today we can talk about smart city infrastructure for mobility. And we have a wonderful speaker on this topic. I've known Mr. Saijo for a number of years because he was assigned here to Silicon Valley. Currently, Mr. Hiroshi Saijo is the Vice President of Business Development and Strategy for Planet Holdings, which is a Toyota finance, Toyota spinout company. He's also the director of a project called Woven Alpha. He's in charge of the overall business development for the company and also for the development of long-term partnerships and investment. He comes to this project by way of Toyota Research Institute Advanced Development, TRIAD, which was a company developed from the Toyota Research Institute, which is a $1 billion research center that Toyota has established just down the road from Stanford. He came from he joined TRIAD in 2020. And before that, he was the person who incorporated Yamaha Motors' corporate venture capital arm, Yamaha Motor Ventures and Laboratory in Silicon Valley. So that's how I got to know Saijo-san. He's a robotic software engineer by background, and one of his development projects was to develop what was called the Motobot, which was a humanoid robot that could ride a commercially available motorcycle and actually won a race with a human motorcycle rider. So when he was with Yamaha, he was selected to be in the Global Corporate Venturing Power List for 3 times, 2016, 2018, and 2020. We're delighted that you can find time in your busy schedule to join us from Tokyo this morning, right?
Yes.
Saijo-san, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much for that. Okay, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about what we are doing in the Woven Planet. And I was very encouraged by Dr. Dasher. When I heard from him, he woke up this morning very early to participate in the world innovation kind of activities, so that we should do more. That's a kind of one of the lessons I could learn this time. So the Woven Planet is a relatively new company and transformed from TRIAD, as the Richardson mentioned. So that the mission of this company is to drive transformation of Toyota to be a mobility company. So let me explain that our business growth strategy that will cover that Woven City and what we are going to build in the city. So that this is a kind of content I'm going to speak about this time. So first chapter is the intro, who I am, and the key learnings from Bay Area, innovation ecosystem in Japan. Based on those kind of stuff, that we implemented our business strategy in the Woven Planet, how we could learn from Bay Area and Silicon Valley to get the essentials of the innovation ecosystem. Literally, that ecosystem will be center of the Woven City to be a living laboratory and ever-evolving city by having the variety of the entrepreneurs, and then Toyota's scalability, power to scale, that will help them to be able to deliver greater options of the mobility for the people and the society. So this is the slide of who I am. Left-hand side, this is a picture illustration I got from my former colleague in Yamaha. I traveled a lot to meet the variety of person, not only the US, but also the New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Europe, because the world is so diverse. But Silicon Valley is kind of a very diverse community, but we need to understand what will be local unmet needs, what will be the personal challenge there. So that's why I traveled a lot. And then the UFO kind of picture is that because I was called kind of alien, and then it came from my time in the Yamaha. I joined the Yamaha 25 years ago as a software engineer. As you know very well, Yamaha is a very well-known company in the business of a motorcycle, marine vehicle, such as leisure vehicle, very much mechanical-oriented philosophy or culture there. So I'm pure software engineer, and I joined Yamaha to work for robotics and industrial automation, which is a part of Yamaha, but it is not so major business. That's why I could be the sort of alien, even in Yamaha, to think about things differently. And that is the great opportunity for me to try something new, value created on top of the existing business, which is a more solution-based business. Our robot business, industrial automation business at that time was pure product sales. As you know well, and a product business is also having a challenge in the commoditization. So that how we can develop the additional value on top of those products, that's a kind of opportunity and challenge that by utilizing software flexibility and agility, we could develop new revenue source on top of product business, which is solution business. That has been recognized by one of the executives in charge of the new business development, the company-wide activities. Then he asked me to be in the Bay Area to start the very first ever corporate venturing activity, which is Yamaha Motor Ventures Laboratory Silicon Valley, as Dasha mentioned. And then one of the projects that we learned, not only for the investments in the early stage company, is the right-hand side picture. It's a motorbot. And then that was known by Jeff Bezos. And then we got the invitation from him to exhibit our motorbot in the private event, which is Mars, MAAS. And then he loved the motorbot. Actually, at that time, he asked me to sell this motorbot for him by $10 million, but I rejected. I should say that. Now I'm regretting. But anyway, those are the kind of things that I have done before joining TRID/Urban Planet. And then at the Bay Area, I could learn many things. So that this is a kind of picture of the Silicon Valley innovation ecosystem from my perspective. From left to right, and then the Silicon Valley has been known as a center of innovation. That so many people try to be there, who has a passion and a motivation and maybe ambition, so that they became entrepreneur even before launching any business. That's one of the uniqueness I could see, because it's not common in Japan. If that's the entrepreneur before starting any business, this is just freelance in Japan. But in the Silicon Valley, the entrepreneur has established their position clearly as a center of the ecosystem. Then they start up their business by having strong support and a variety of support from mentors and incubators. And then they became startup here. And of course, any new business are very uncertain by nature. So many startups miserably fail, but they just need to be one step back to the entrepreneur. That will provide the safety guard for those people to try new things repeatedly. That's the power of the innovation. Once that startup could find a good path to move forward, then they will get further acceleration and support from variety of the institute, such as accelerator, venture capital, corporate venture capital, and a corporation. And then the M&A IPO recently SPAC are a typical exit for those people to see the real value. And then corporation may acquire those companies and people for their growth. And then once they get the important milestone, there are two paths. One path is to be back into the entrepreneur position as a serial entrepreneur to start greater journey by having the experience in the past and also some capital that liquidated from the event. Also, if that person made a series of the innovation, they literally become a billionaire. So they really want to be an angel investor to support the new generation people to be able to do innovation greater than what that person has done. So that's why angel investors take the very important role to put small money but a very early stage concept of the people. This is also one of the uniqueness I could observe that when I was in the Bay Area. And it's not the common in Japan, the other area try to be innovative and a community. So I would like to emphasize that this entrepreneur position establishment and then the volume of the angel investment are the key driver of this innovation ecosystem. But on the other hand, I also could observe some sort of the weakness and the danger in this growth stage, especially for the business or technology who needed to have the hardware or infrastructure. Because hardware is not so easy like software to scale, right? So that the money in the capital here is already commodity. So many people can provide the capital. But it's difficult for those people, startup and entrepreneurs, to get power to scale, to deploy their business in a worldwide basis. This is one of the takeaways that from this experience. And definitely the key principle on this ecosystem is the openness, tolerance for failure, and out-of-box thinking. Why that I could see that the growth stage and the power to scale is a missing piece in this ecosystem, right? This is kind of a lack of real partnership between entrepreneurs and the corporations, right? What is a failure? Many cases, failure in the ecosystem, Silicon Valley ecosystem, try to do something very ambitious. Then they fail. This is a failure, but they could learn a lot of stuff from that failure for the next journey, right? But in Japan, the missing opportunities actually are long-term irreversible failure for me, right? In the left-hand side, this is the typical Japanese corporation culture, right? And even the CEO or executives are expecting some innovation from a people in the company. That needs the player to try to take the opportunities. But most of the case, people really want to end up sitting at the bench to evaluate people and talking about something as an audience, not players, even though management is expecting player to come. This is the kind of typical corporation culture in Japan, unfortunately. On the other hand, startups like this, they decided to fly because they believe that is valuable. And then before hitting ground, they need to fly. This is a kind of a commitment and a passion that entrepreneurs are having. How we could see real partnership between those people is extremely difficult, right? So the very different type of people there. So that's why, as I mentioned in this slide, that the growth here to have the real synergistic partnership between the entrepreneurs and the corporation who has a power to scale is very difficult at this point. This is one of the reasons I shifted my career from the investment area to a more business development partnership, because I really want to be a person to contribute to facilitate the real partnerships to deliver greater value and a greater colorful option to the world in the real world. So here's kind of the key things we need to consider when we really want to implement essentials learning from the Bay Area into Japan. For me, entrepreneur will be the key term we need to think about if we really want to make the Japan to be another type of the center of innovation. So entrepreneur will be the enabler of the real partnership. So many people talking about partnership, but the most of the case I could observe is 1 + 1 = 2. For me, that is not partnership actually. This is a vendor-vendor relationship, zero-sum game. Real partnership I could enjoy in the time I was in the Bay Area is definitely 1 + 1 more than 2. So how that entrepreneur will take an important role to facilitate that kind of stuff. And the second point is the power to scale. Now in Japan, the steel corporations are having the huge resources to support the technology and the product to be scaling. So how are we going to utilize those resources to be available for the entrepreneurs and the startup to scale? So that's why entrepreneur will take another role to pull those resources to be available for those people. And then this is very.
So, Saijo-san, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Sure.
Because you've introduced the term entrepreneur, which you hear about a lot related to Japanese entrepreneurship, and maybe not so much here, actually. I'm asking, what kind of profile would an entrepreneur have? Would this be somebody in a large company that's starting a company internal startup? Or would it be the person in the big company who is handling a partnership with some sort of real external startup company? Where do you find entrepreneurs?
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Richard-san. And an entrepreneur should be the bridge between entrepreneurs and the established corporation. Then when the corporation, maybe open innovation team, try to communicate with the entrepreneurs, but the protocol is mismatched, and then they talk that are passing each other actually, right? Yeah. Because sometimes that open innovation team prioritize benefit for the corporation to as a first priority. But actually, we need to prioritize how that the entrepreneur startup can scale by utilizing the resources that corporation is having. That way, we can see the win-win relationship in the future. It's not short term, of course, but that we invest in the startup or companies who are doing something very important for the society. How we can utilize the resources within the company available for those people, right? So that maybe that person has an experience to work in the Bay Area to understand how Silicon Valley works, and then that person must implement the essentials into the corporation. That's a good kind of example.
Actually, I think that's a really great example, because to have a relationship between a large company and the startup company takes a lot of effort. These things don't be successful just automatically. And the effort is required on the part of someone who really has that sort of passion and vision and execution ability in the big company.
Yeah, so
thanks, that's great, yeah.
Yep. Okay, let me continue.
Okay,
then.
sorry to interrupt.
No worries. So this is a famous quote that made by Mark Andreessen, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. Software is eating the world, right? Then this important kind of part is the right-hand side. In software is eating the world in all sectors, right? And in the future, every company will become a software company. Now, when that quote has been out, the many Japanese corporations specialized in the hardware manufacturing got scary. Oh, software is eating up the world. Our business will be gone, or our business will be commoditized. But for me, as a software engineer in the hardware-oriented company, this message is a great opportunity. Because if software is eating up the world, hardware can expand the world. As you know very well, any software is useless without having a hardware. Good example, the iPhone. The iPhone is a hardware device, but the value proposition is software and ecosystem, apps, and data. Right? But without having the very well-designed hardware, software should be virtual. So this is actually the opportunity for me. So that's why the ideally one is started to change the way of thinking in the hardware company. Definitely, we need to have the software and hardware, but software first. I could see many debate. Oh, we need to go for the software and the hardware. We should prioritize hardware, software. No, we should have both. I came from robotics industry as a by nature, the software and the hardware in my mind. But the way of thinking is just slightly different. Here is software first. Software first means we should think about user experience, the service design first, how we can deliver the value for those society and people. Then that will determine software architecture. Then software architecture will specify the specification of the device. That's a way of thinking. We should think software first, then the hardware later, because the software can unlock the potential of the hardware, but only if the hardware is designed by software first thinking, right? Many cases, then automotive is a very good example. We started from the hardware design. What kind of horsepower we need to implement, what kind of the interior, what kind of the function features we need to build into that vehicle, right? Then we sell the product to the customer. But the software first thinking, that especially on the mobility business area, we need to think about what kind of mobility we want to deliver to the society and the people. That will determine what kind of software architecture we need to have. That will require the hardware specification. Then software company cannot change the hardware design. This is one of the important learning from my experience to work with Google X in the Bay Area. We had a good collaboration with Google, one of the Google X team who is doing some agricultural automation business at that time. And then what if they expected from Yamaha is just hardware. Then I asked a question for that person. Google has the tremendous resources. Why don't you guys try to build hardware by yourself? And he said clearly, hardware is so hard. So that now I could understand, okay, we need to have a real collaboration between the hardware company and software company based on the software first way of thinking to redesign the hardware architecture to maximize software potential. Then the software will unlock the potential of the hardware, so vice versa. This is a kind of the guiding principle we implemented in the urban planet. And then this company, TRID and the Urban Planet, has been founded to drive our initiative toward the transformation of to a mobility company, which was clearly announced at the CES 2018 by Akio Toyoda. So for me, mobility is name of the value, the movability. That Toyota has delivered mobility by the automobile long years. But now they're based on the societal needs and the challenges, and also the digital native generation people, that they really wanted to secure to the access to the mobility, not the owning the vehicle. So how we do that? And then Urban City is here, and then we announced this back in 2020. And then many people talking about that this is just smart city, but it's very related to mobility. Okay, good example is here. So that, as you may know, the average utilization of the cars, privately owned vehicle on the planet is just 5%. That's why we need to design a city to have enough capacity of the parking. And then we need to have the wide highway to accommodate those vehicles to be used. But as you could see in the 101 or other freeway in the Bay Area, most of cases that one passenger in the vehicle, now they occupy the space, right? And another example is parking lot. When we park the cars in the parking lot, that cars are not generating any value, just occupying a space. We pay money for that, right? It's ridiculous because that means that the cars are very underutilized asset. But if our technology and the software first way of thinking can change that utilization higher up to maybe 20%, 30%, that will change the city design drastically because we don't need to have a parking lot space because of higher utilization, that we can learn that the cars not more higher utilization, right? That's the kind of motivation we really want to build this smart city from scratch to demonstrate the ideal living space by having advanced mobility options. This is another picture, so that very kind of the attractive space we are going to develop. So that when we talked about the infrastructure of city, it's not about physical infrastructure. It's about more ecosystem. So as I mentioned in the very early on this presentation, so the center of the urban city will be the ecosystem to invite the entrepreneurs and innovators all over the world to come here to validate the concept to be visible and demonstrate the value to the people living there. So that how we can build ecosystem as a center of innovation in the urban city, that's a key. And I'm now leading that kind of effort. It's kind of venture studio model, consists of the early stage investment and accelerators, and also the corporation support. So I couldn't disclose the detail at this stage because there are so many that are working in progress, things, but the near future, I hope I can talk about that more detail. Then I'd like to get your feedback, how we can refine that ecosystem to be available for a variety of people. Moving to the next kind of the topic, that TRID to Urban Planet. As I mentioned, we could learn a lot of stuff from Silicon Valley, how we can foster entrepreneurship in Japan to be an important role between the entrepreneur and the corporation to provide the power to scale available for the many people in the world. So TRID to Urban Planet. So I'd like to ask you to watch the video.
Mobility is a fundamental desire of all people. Our mission and vision is mobility to love and safety to live. We will focus not just on mobility of people, but also mobility of goods and information. The key ingredients for technology success include leveraging a core strength, having innovation and speed, as well as harnessing resources. We have Woven Core as our core strength in automated driving and advanced safety. We have Woven Alpha with innovation and new product ideas. And we have Woven Capital, bringing together tremendous resources to do investments and partnership. Together, the Woven Planet Group will create a bright future for our own planet, Earth.
自動運転技術、高度運転支援技術を駆使することで、ドライバーのパートナーとして進化し続けるモビリティの実現、そして全ての人に移動の自由を提供し、結果として人々の幸せにつなげていくことを目指しています。
私たちはソフトウェアファーストという考え方のもと開発を進めています。これはまずソフトウェアを開発し、それを動かすための、その成長を支えるための十分なパワーを持つハードウェアを選ぶという新しい考え方です。
Woven Alpha represents this heart and spirit of innovation within the Woven Planet company, working together to leverage our core strengths.
Our goal is to enable the most programmable vehicle, not just at Woven Planet, but for our whole planet.
我々がキャピタルというとき、それは資金だけではなく、技術や知識、人などのリソースです。ビジョンを共有する幅広いパートナーと強い絆を築き、1+1 が2よりも大きくなるような新しい価値創造のエコシステムを構築していきます。
Woven Capital is an $800 million dedicated fund that exists to create a global portfolio of partners and technologies that will advance the vision and mission of Woven Planet.
私たちが最も大切だと思っていることは、人を中心に住む方一人一人の生活を想像しながら取り組むということです。 幸せがあふれる街を思いを共にする仲間と一緒に作っていこうと思っています。
ここはなんか日本なのにシリコンバレーのこう圧縮された空気が溜まってて、毎日ワクワクはしてます。
What excites me most about Alpha is the opportunity to go beyond traditional OEM's operation.
原点を回帰して、お客様ファーストでさらなるその新しい技術、価値を提供していく、機会をもらえたっていうところに対してすごくワクワクしています。
Whether that is providing mobility to people who currently don't have access to mobility, or whether it is something as simple as bringing happiness to their lives, that's what really gets me excited.
幸せ、笑顔であふれてる、一人一人がやりたいことを実現できてるっていう世界になるといいなと思ってます。はい、
まさしくこれってなんか新たな歴史の1ページをさらに作るようなものだと思うんですけども、エンジニア人生で一度あるかないかというような大きな変化の場に自分が関われるということに本当に幸せを感じます。
Although the technology is important, what really matters is the people. After all, the reason that we are doing this is to create a better life for humans in the future. Welcome to Woven Planet.
Saijo-san, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. Our mission is to make the mobility to love and the safety to live. And definitely mobility is the essential value we really want to have. And also safety is also the fundamental desire for everybody. So how we can realize those important values for the people on the planet. So this is the kind of vision that we are having 3 types of the mobility. Mobility of people, mobility of goods are relatively easy for you guys to understand. But here is mobility of information. Those 3 mobilities that are in our mind. So that by utilizing the information data, we can utilize the mobility of people, mobility of goods more. Essentially, that mobility came from the space and time. Currently, still we are wasting the precious space and the time due to lack of the innovation or sophisticated technology services. By having that aggregated information of the demand and then the supply, we may be able to utilize that consumption of the time and the space productively. That's why that we put those 3 mobilities work together and then help each other. And then, as the video mentioned, and our Woven Planet's kind of philosophy is here. How we gonna make it a good blend of the Japanese craftsmanship and a Kaizen incremental improvement culture and a Silicon Valley agility and innovation. So that we literally want to be a bridge between those 2 different concepts to be a next new concept. So that we are based in the Nihonbashi in Tokyo. Nihonbashi means Japan bridge. So we want to literally be a bridge. And then recently that we could make several acquisitions in the US and the UK. We could get the very talented, passionate people to change the world to be a better place together with us. And then so that now that we are a global operation. And in this company structure, I personally benchmarked what the Alphabet Google has done in the past to try to develop Moonshot Factory to be beyond Google. Because even the Google, they could see some saturation of the growth in the advertisement search engine business, but they really want to do more beyond that. That's why they decided to reform company structure to be able to do that kind of new innovations. We could learn a lot from that move. So that I try to implement the essentials into our company reorganization. So the holdings company as Urban Planet is here to be responsible to manage mid long-term and also the total optimization. That way, kids under the Urban Planet, Urban Core Alpha, and some project under those companies can focus on their specific project. That way, we have the horizontal and then also the vertical tension that can be managed by executive or leadership team in the Urban Planet to understand what will be the priority for now, maybe the single optimization or total optimization, vice versa. Urban Core is an entity to take over the original role and responsibilities which TRID has had. So that working for Toyota, working for automotive space to deliver quality of software and the technology will be implemented, integrated into next generation cars designed and manufactured by Toyota. That will create the strong foundation infrastructure for us to deliver colorful mobility options to the people in the society based on their unmet needs or localized challenges. Urban Alpha is equivalent to the Google X, its moonshot factory. The Urban Alpha will focus on beyond Toyota, beyond automotive sector, how we can drive the transformation of Toyota to be mobility company. The Urban Capital is the corporate venture capital to support all of our projects under the Urban Planet to be able to pursue the variable partnerships. Those are kind of a starting point that we have done this year. So as I mentioned, this is a kind of introduction, the Urban Planet, Core, and Alpha, and the Capital. We made already several investments in the Neuro and the Lidocell to see the strategic partnership opportunities down the road. This is the current product project portfolio. So the left bottom side is the traditional Toyota business, that the product is vehicle, and then the business model is product sales. That Toyota has been champion in that sector. But when we really want to be a mobility service or mobility player in the world, that we really need to focus on the software to unlock the hardware potential by software. So there are several key projects that here in the center of this graph. The Guardian is the ADAS effort. Mobility as a service is not the uncertain, and but that we really want to be, we really believe there are huge value we can demonstrate and we can deliver to the customer. Now, there are several other projects that specialize in the centered in the software capability, but that will drive us to be connecting to the urban city. As I mentioned in the previous slide, that if we can get the advanced mobility options by effort in this software the related area, that will provide a better utilization of the time and the space for the people and society. That will drive to redesign our living space drastically. Those are kind of the stream that currently we are having. And then Urban Core is owning this area, and then Urban Alpha is owning this area, Urban Capital support this area. Yeah, this is kind of repeated kind of explanation of some detail you can read later. And this is the company reform, the philosophy behind the scene. Yes, and then the ultimate goal of the Urban Planet Group companies is to be a service player, service provider for the customer and a business player in the communities. By understanding their unmet needs, societal challenges, or burden, we can capture the unmet needs that are those challenges clearly. And based on that, we will design service or business solution and with principle of the mobility of people, information, and goods. Then that will specify the product requirement for the Toyota, maybe other kind of partner companies, to ask them to design, develop the product suitable for our service. Then we shall integrate those technology with our software component or platform, collaborating with the ecosystem partner to deliver the real value to the society and the customer. Right, that's kind of the flow we're now going to build into the Urban Planet Toyota Group collaboration. This is the progress so far. toward the mobility company will redesign our living space in the urban city. And then again, infrastructure is not physical infrastructure only, it's about more ecosystem play. So partnership is no longer optional, it's mandatory. So how we can share the vision, share the passion, and then share the risk and share the benefit. Those are the things that are very important practice, but it's not easy to execute, especially in the Japan and established industry. But we believe that will be powerful option we need to pursue if we really want to realize that a very next generation infrastructure ecosystem to drive our transformation. So those are kind of the explanation and the content I would like to share with you. Of course, we are still trying to do many things and uncertain. So that's why this is even great opportunity, even for me, to have interaction with you to share the notes and share the knowledge to make our planet to be a better place to live. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saijo-san. Before you stop sharing your slide, would you go back to your immediately preceding slide? So you've got from August 2020 to June 2021 up at the top in a timeline. One of the things that really impresses me as something that only a large company could do would be to start something of this scale. And also it's kind of Japanese to be able to have this kind of a long-term view and to look ahead and to try to bring about what a huge change this really is to the traditional automobile industry. So in regard to this, the company was formed in 2018. Woven Planet Holdings was formed then. And I'm curious, how do you see the ultimate business model of Woven Planet Holdings? Will it be things like licensing platform, software platform technology, or what kind of revenue streams do you see?
Yes, it's a good question. Yeah, definitely that we are believing platform will enable variety of the services and the local businesses. Right, currently we could see so many startups try to do some very cool and important business in the mobility, but they need to build up everything from scratch because current cars are not open enough for those people to access, right? And then there is no standardization across the OEMs, right? That is extremely difficult disadvantage for a startup to do something valuable for the people living there. But if we can make our cars to be very standardized, at least the software platform, that will enable variety of the mobility services much easier and faster, right? So we really want to be an enabler and then by providing our platform for those people to utilize. So definitely platform play will be our main focus at this point.
This is one of the immediate kind of differences of opinion between what's happened in the automotive industry up to now and what you're talking about going forward. You mentioned that they're incompatible. There is no common standard among the different automobile makers. That to have a standard requires a certain amount of openness. Do you think you will be supporting an open source software approach, or how will this work?
Much. Actually, James Kaffner, our CEO, is a big believer of the open platform will change the industry to be much more valuable. So that's why openness is one of the key things we need to foster, which is very different mindset from the traditional auto industry, as Dasha and Richard and you mentioned. But you shouldn't compare those kind of stuff because the play is different. So many people try to compare red and blue, which is better color. No answer there. We need to have a both. But we should know red is suitable for this case. Blue should be suitable for this case, right? But by having those two, red and blue, we have an opportunity to create purple, right? That's kind of where we need to have. Many people talking about the Toyota or Yamaha, Panasonic, those established corporations is kind of dinosaur and too slow. But by having those kind of a slow process, we can enjoy very stable, reliable product, right? This is very important. But on the other hand, we should have the agility or more faster-paced innovation, mainly brought by software. So how we can get those both benefits into one place to deliver the greater options for the people to pick. That's a kind of a challenge and an opportunity. That's why I'm here.
Okay. And that's a great answer. Kind of another similar problem that you have is people are so used to the current lifestyles that they have. And there are some deep psychological things about having my car and wanting to be able to just get into my car whenever I want to. On the one hand, you have those psychological things that hold things back, actually. And then you have all the pressure for greater efficiency. You know, you're right, cars are only used about 5% of the time. And, you know, the environmental problems that causes, as well as just the inefficiency in how cities are dealt with. How do you see people's kind of preferences changing? How can you change preferences over time to have something better for the planet as well as for the city that they're in?
Yeah, maybe 10 years later, probably a personally owned vehicle could be major mobility option for most of people on the planet, right? But we could see, obviously, the digital native generation may want to have the options for them to pick, right? Hardware business require the volume because that will create the huge scale merit in the production. That way we can provide the products with very affordable price for the people. That's a kind of hardware generation. But the software has tremendous capability to provide the customizability and flexibility for the people to pick. As you can imagine, that there are so many iPhones, but I believe there are no same iPhone having same app, right?
Exactly. So yeah, right.
So the hardware is same, but the application and the configuration is different. But on the other hand, I believe there are so many same setting configuration Lexus there, right? So that how we can make those vehicles to be more flexible, customizable, right? So that we needed redesign hardware to accommodate that kind of flexibility. But again, that we just really want to provide the options for the people to pick, because of the personalization, diversity, localization, this is a mega trend. They really want to have that kind of more specific solution. If we really need to cover those solution by hardware, it's almost impossible. It's too high mix, low volume. By utilizing the software advantage, we may be able to do that, right? Then Akio Toyoda clearly mentioned, we don't know the answer. That's why we want to deliver the options. Good example is a powertrain. Combustion engine is a traditional powertrain, then electric vehicle, hydrogen. We don't know the answer, but we really want to give options for people to pick based on their local situation or personalized preference, right? That's kind of the philosophy that we are currently having, not only in the Toyota side, but also Woven Planet side.
So this also means you have to have very close, at least communications with the kind of deeper levels of infrastructure that may be provided by public sector or by the telecom companies. How does Woven Planet interact with those groups?
Sure. Of course, the vertical players, or how can I say, more infrastructure related players are extremely important for us to understand the situation correctly. But the partnership with those people are not so easy at this point. So that's why we are trying to have those kind of opportunity. Good example is one of the motivation, one of the reasons that we participate in the Smart City X organized by Scrum Ventures is that the reason. Because the Scrum Ventures is a neutral position organizer to facilitate that kind of community, right? So that we could meet JR East in that community to discuss about how we can find the private public transportation hybrid model by utilizing the technology in the AD, ADAS, or other technology, right? It's really difficult for us to go to the JR East directly from Toyota perspective. But by having the Smart City X community, that we can get that kind of opportunity to interact more straightforward and more frankly. And we are now having several projects with JR East to deliver more mobility options for the people living in the rural area in Japan.
Thank you. Another question that actually kind of picks up on a question that came to me by direct message. What Woven Planet is doing is a kind of very thoughtful approach. I won't say it's particularly slow or anything like that, but it's a very different kind of philosophy than, say, what Tesla is doing, where it's trying to roll out its super fast charging stations all over the world as quickly as possible and establish dominance by getting to market early. How does Woven Planet deal with that kind of a situation? What do you think about the Tesla approach, and how do you stay viable, being more thoughtful over the long run?
Sure. Tesla did a great job in that business, but we really want to deliver long-lasting value to the society and the planet, right? And an electric vehicle is one of a very important option. We really need to deliver to the customer society, but that's not enough to cover everything, right? So that's why actually I'm not seeing Tesla is a direct competitor, because we really want to be a platformer. I don't think Tesla is a platformer for now, right? They are kind of electric vehicle provider, and which that made a breakthrough in the electric vehicle domain. That's the fantastic, right? That they get the electric vehicle as an option to be available for the people in an affordable price and then extremely good performance, which is great. But we really want to think about the mobility more directly. As I mentioned before in the slide, mobility is a name of the value, movability. How we can provide access to the mobility. This is a very different play than Tesla. Tesla is just providing the vehicle option for the people to own, right? So maybe we can work with Tesla to drive our mobility innovation together.
Okay. No, I see what you mean, because they have a piece of the infrastructure with the EV charging. And there's no reason that can't be compatible with other elements of the platform. So what do you think about car ownership in the future? Do you think that we will have a lot of people owning tiny little things like smart cars that are, or is it going to be more of a shared model?
So if our platform can enable a variety and colorful options of the mobility services, people may pick that not owning car, right? Because if they think this is a much more better option for those people rather than owning cars, they may pick that not owning car option, right? And but still people may enjoy driving a vehicle, right, for their purpose, right? They may own that. Right, but again, we don't think single answer shall cover everything. That's why we really want to develop colorful options for the people to pick.
And get market feedback as you're delivering these.
Yep.
I'm curious what you think about the prospects for e-vehicles because of the time it takes to charge them. Do you think that we'll eventually switch to a situation where you swap out batteries?
It's possible, right? And then again, time and space is essential resources for the people to consume, right? If we need to be bound by the electric charging time, that with some restriction, I cannot go out far away from the charging station. That would be the kind of restricted time consumption. right? That we need to have some solution to free up from that kind of restriction, right? Swapping battery is one of the options. That some scientists may invent very quick charging, the methodology. Yeah. I don't know that, but what we are focusing on is what will be the software, hardware, technology options for us to utilize time and space more productively and creatively. Actually, for me, what smartphone has done is that, okay, then when we arrived at the meeting space 5 minutes earlier, before a smartphone, that we just need to wait, right? Nothing to do. But by having a smartphone, I can check my bank account. I can wire the money. I can check the email, other stuff. So that the smartphone allow me to consume the time. It's not consumable before. Yeah. Right? In that case, the time and space are the essential resources we should focus on as an innovator.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see the triangle between mobility of people, mobility of goods, and mobility of information. I kind of have a delicate question I want to ask, but before I do, I want to mention that if you have a question you would like to ask, please write it in the chat window and I'll relay it to Mr. Saijo. The question I kind of want to ask before we go to audience questions, though, is maybe a very delicate one. So Toyota Motor Corporation continues to exist as an OEM, as a company that makes money by selling and leasing cars, producing, selling, and leasing. And some of what you're doing could actually reduce the number of cars that they sell. All right, how do you deal with that? That's it, you know, what do you do about disruptive innovation when you're the disruptor?
Yeah, so that's right. And we are seeing the decrease of the car sales volume because, as I mentioned, currently 5% utilization. It's extremely low, especially for me because I came from industrial automation domain. For me, average utilization 90%, right? 5% is super underutilized asset. So that's why it's natural that if we really want to think about environment or efficiency, that we should increase utilization. That way we can reduce the emission per mile, right? If that's our goal, declining the car sales volume is right way for us to see. But instead of in addition to that, we may be able to build our business in a more software mobility service side. That way we can maintain our growth as a company and not necessarily focusing on the car sales because we really want to be a mobility company. That means we want to deliver mobility options, not only through the cars, but also the software or infrastructure, maybe some services.
But I can imagine that, you know, the original parent company might not be too happy if they feel like you're taking away some of their sales.
Yeah, that's the natural kind of feeling, of course. But when I had several conversations with executives in the TMC, Toyota Motor Corporation, they clearly understood that necessity of this pain, right? But we really need to overcome that pain to be a greater company to provide the mobility options.
The overall growth will be greater. Okay.
Yep.
So we have a question from the audience about resource waste and zero carbon. How do they factor into your motivations, into your core strategy?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Of course, the hydrogen is one of the area we are trying to do focus on in terms of the carbon neutrality. So our enemy is carbon, right? And not the combustion engine itself. So how we can find a good balance of those, that variety of the type of the power plant, that is the kind of the challenge and the opportunity for us. And also that I talked about utilization, right? If we can get the higher utilization, that will also contribute less the waste of resources. And then Woven City side, that we are trying to develop the demand supply management system. So that until recent, that our way to develop infrastructure is always based on the high max capacity, right? Then we need to have the infrastructure with energy, electricity, or other stuff, right? But when we have the chance to manage the demand and supply dynamically by utilizing software technology, data, or other stuff, we don't need to have the max capacity based infrastructure, right? And then we can get a better, how can I say, way to manage the resources. So this will be one of the themes we want to demonstrate, validate in the urban city. Good example is dynamic pricing and reverse auction, and then the other kind of methodology we may consider to implement in the city infrastructure level to manage and predict demand and supply way better than today.
Okay, thank you. Also have a question about why a startup company would want to partner with Woven Core or Woven Alpha, or even receive investment from Woven Capital. What kind of things would you provide to that partnership for the startup company?
Yep, good question. That first thing, based on my recent interaction with companies we invested in, their common expectation from us is to access to the scalability, right? And then of course they understood Toyota Motor Corporation has tremendous power to scale, but not easy to communicate on the same page as explained in my slide, right? The protocol currently in the established corporation protocol in the startup company is so different. So they try to communicate, but sometimes they're passing each other. But the Urban Planet, especially the Urban Capital team, came from very innovation-oriented community and an experience. They can be interpreter between the startups and then the established corporates, which is Toyota Motor Corporation. And also that we have a mindset, give first, take later. So that there are many cases that the established corporation people struggle to do give first because they couldn't illustrate, envision, take story later. But that we will do give first, then consider how we can take later. That kind of mindset has been implemented in my team. And also that I would like to emphasize my team, 80% of people is non-Japanese and a non-automotive experienced person. So only me, and only very few people from the auto industry. That way that we can make it a very high mix of the diversified people in my team to communicate better with those startups.
What kind of people is Woven Planet, any of the groups looking to hire then?
Oh,
software
of course,
engineers or what?
Yeah, in the engineering side, a software engineer, but what we are going to do is the safety critical software, right? So the functional safety, those kind of things is very important. So how are we gonna utilize, modernize the software, higher productivity without compromising functional safety? So the robotics is a good example. Automated driving is a part of sort of robotics, right? So I came from robotics industry, and the embedded software implemented in the hardware is extremely important foundation for us to secure the enough security, right? So that we really want to have that kind of person who really want to unlock the potential of the hardware by utilizing software technology. It's not easy, but definitely very challenging and an exciting opportunity.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but we have a question from the audience.
Sure.
Is Woven Planet going to actually make vehicles, say electric vehicles, or is that really, you would hand that off to somebody else?
No. So that we are going to be specialized in the software and the platform data, right? And then hardware excellence will be in the Toyota or other our partner companies, right? So that we should have the some sort of the power to convince hardware player to change their way to design of the hardware, but we are not going to own the hardware asset itself. Similar to the Apple and the Foxconn relationship, Apple has the difference design, architecture request, and the capability of the design of the hardware, but they do not own the hardware asset itself. Similar model we are envisioning.
Okay. I would also like to ask how you see things with autonomous vehicles. Woven Planet Holdings has recently acquired a company that makes an operating system for autonomous vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that autonomy is going to be much more common? How do you see the future for that? Because there's going to be a lot of people driving cars for a long time, I think.
Yeah, now in terms of the autonomy, there are several degrees of the automation, right? Level 2, 3, 4. So that we need to think carefully about that. So that definitely when we want to get to the higher utilization of the vehicles, autonomy will be the one of a very strong enabler for us to utilize, right? On the other hand, this is the first time for the people on the planet to get the robot come to your site without your permission, because currently the most of the robots are working in the factory or fenced area, but this time that the autonomous driving cars will come to your neighborhood that without notice, right? So the question is
and without a cage around them. Yeah.
So the question is that what would be the benefit by having those automated driving cars on the street, right? So that we need to think about the value brought by those technology and the product rather than thinking about technological maturity. So that we are currently thinking about the ADAS assistance system will be helpful for an elderly person to maintain their mobility, because as you may know, unfortunately, we are having sad news in Japan almost every day. The elderly person made a mistake to operate the vehicle and hit the wall and then hit the people, right? It's very unfortunate, but it's very tough for them to give up driver license, because that means they will lose mobility, right? Especially the people living in a rural area, they need to survive. They need to maintain the mobility, right? So that how we can deliver the more safer mobility for those people, the ADAS technology could be one of the technology to mitigate their challenge a little bit. And also that this is related to the discussion I'm having with JR East, how we can provide mobility options for the people living in a rural area, not public transportation, more hybrid model of public and private transportation service for those people by utilizing autonomy. So the autonomy is a broad kind of potential, but we need to think about the use case by use case, how we're going to implement based on the local challenges, unmet needs.
Okay, so next question is my editing of a question from the audience. As a software company that's interested in these kind of platforms and sort of mobility lifestyles, does Woven Planet Holdings have a position on the changeover from internal combustion to EV, or whether EVs or hydrogen is better than the future? First of all, does the company have a position?
Actually, no.
Okay. Now, that's a little bit different from what you see in the news about Toyota itself, that, it's all over the New York Times that Toyota's, betting on hydrogen while everybody else is going to EVs. And I think that, just to keep things clear, that's not part of the whole development in the future that you need to be concerned with, and with Woven Planet, right?
Yeah, as a Woven Planet, we need to focus on a more software platform than the data area. Of course, the Toyota is having a much broader responsibility to develop the more hardware options, including the hydrogen, the battery electric vehicle, maybe other form of the energy. But our kind of mission and role and responsibility as a Woven Planet is to drive the innovation and transformation of Toyota to be a mobility company, right? By utilizing, so that a hydrogen based car or other car powertrain is an enablement for us. So by utilizing those enablements, what kind of a solution we can deliver to the customer? this is the kind of urban planet and the main role and responsibility. So in the other words, that Toyota will create and produce a lot of the good ingredients. We are a chef to cook that.
So how far along is the stew, especially Woven City up near Mount Fuji? Are you already trying things out with applications? Do you actually have test vehicles up there already, or how far is the project?
So that we are currently planning to start the venture studio project. That, as I mentioned, that the infrastructure of the urban city is not necessarily be a physical one. It's more about the ecosystem, how we can develop that ecosystem to be an engine of the urban city being a living laboratory and ever-evolving city. So that unfortunately I couldn't tell the detail today, but that very soon we will show our plan clearly based on my friends in the Bay Area feedback that I'm very crazy. And that crazy idea, they really love to work with me. So please stay tuned.
So one of the things that used to be talked about a lot was the connected car.
Oh.
And whenever they talked about connected car, they would always talk about location-based services, where when you drive close to a restaurant, the restaurant would make you an offer for 25% off your meal or something. It never happened. Any idea why that really didn't take off?
Sure, and it's related to standardization. So that Toyota has their own system on the connected vehicle, right? And then Honda is having their own, and then other OEMs may have their own. If so, that there are no motivation for a restaurant to cover a very different type of communication system. And then that's one of the challenges that we could observe. Of course, we need to think about very differently to prioritize customer value, right? That's why that again, the Urban Planet is here. That you could see, obviously, we don't have Toyota name in our company names. This is kind of one of a secret, but we try to keep the Toyota name and some part of our company names, even that after the company reform, the person who asked us to remove Toyota name completely is Akio Toyoda. Because we clearly said that we want to be beyond Toyota, beyond the automotive. His question is, if that is your purpose, why you need to keep Toyota name in the company names? That's why that we are here to drive Toyota to be much more greater hardware company by utilizing our software capability to deliver greater user experience for the people. So the restaurant reservation and then the discount offer is a good example. If we can focus on the customer value, the user experience more, that we should have that kind of the service now.
Okay, so how did the name Woven Planet come to exist?
So the origin of the Toyota Motor Corporation is a kind of weaving machine, right? That they weave the thread to be a fabric. That's the machine that is our founding product and the business. So the weave is a very good word, because when we weave a colorful thread to be a fabric, that fabric may have a function to warm the people or protect the people from something that are dangerous. And then also that when we disassemble those fabric to be a thread, color remains, right? When we weave the red thread and then the blue thread looks purple, but when we disassemble, it still remains red and blue. That way we can respect the characters in the variety of people, but when we work together, that will create a new thing, something. That's why we decided to use Weave as our company names. And then definitely we want to work at the global scale. That's why I plan it.
That's a great story. Thank you. Also, we have a question about AI and ML, but what I'd like to ask is how, what kind of major technology developments you see as really impacting the future of mobility, not only AI, but 5G networks and so forth. How do you think that we will respond to developments in these major technology areas?
Yeah, sure. And AI ML is one of the mainstream in the technology will drive our innovation. But still, the AI, the ML didn't have enough data, enough meaningful data yet.
Yeah.
So that we didn't unlock the full potential of the AI ML itself yet. That's why we really want to develop mobility of information, right? The data utilization at this point is not well done due to concerning of the privacy or other kind of risks. So that if we can develop the infrastructure to utilize the information data much safer, that will drive the more innovation brought by AI ML. So the AI ML will do the better job to be seen in the more physical space by having the software first designed hardware.
Okay. How do you see 5G? Is it essential before you can really have this kind of infrastructure, or will the infrastructure really be able to deal with lower rates of data transmission?
Yeah, and lower latency is one of the attractive factor, especially for the robotics. Right, latency is always a challenge for the remote control or other technology in the robotics. But the 5G is giving the advanced level lower latency. That will be opening up the many opportunity for the people to do more remote operated services. But not specifically 5G. There are so many other communication related technologies. So how we're going to utilize those means based on our service design, that would be a key. Okay.
So you mentioned that you're looking for software people, especially in security areas.
No, not security, functional
not
safety.
Security. Okay. What about the security of the whole kind of software infrastructure, though?
Oh, yeah, this is also the very critical part, that especially when we want to utilize the data or sensitive data specifically, but security is no longer optional. It's very fundamental necessity. So that without security, there is no safety, right? That's why we are investing the security at the infrastructure level a lot, not only within the company, but also for the university too. That way, we will be allowed to utilize data as much as possible.
Okay. If we have other questions from the audience, we can take a couple of more minutes on this. Otherwise, I'll ask one or two questions and then we'll move into a more informal off-the-record chat. I'd like to ask how you see outside the test bed, moving outside of specific areas like Woven City and into existing cities and so forth. Is this going to happen over a period of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What do you think? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, we are seeing Woven City as a test course for the innovation, right? That when we are going to develop new model of the cars, definitely we tried 1,000 times to confirm reliability, safety was a feature in the test course. That's why the people can feel the new model launched in the market is already tested, confirmed, right? But many innovation related to hardware that couldn't have the space to validate their reliability performance. That's why Woven City has been built as a kind of a greenfield smart city, so that as a test bed and then a test course, so that technologies and the solution graduated from the Woven City will scale to be available variety of a city outside of Woven City. That's a picture. So we are not envisioning to have many Woven cities in all of the world. Rather, that we really want to make this ecosystem to accelerate the hardware-related innovation to be safely scaled to the all of the world. So that to your question, Dasha-san, maybe 5 years could be the relevant time horizon I could see.
Okay. I think that now is a good time to kind of switch the formal session into a more informal off-the-record chat that will not be recorded. Okay.